Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Whitfield Analysis. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live for the first time in roughly 8 months from the Next Gen Conservative Studios, and I want to thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the program. We have a lot to cover. First off, though, I want to go over our social media. As usual, you can contact me anytime via the following methods. You can leave a voicemail for us on our voicemail line at 941-564-5805. You can follow me on Twitter at SamW_NGC. Hashtag WA Radio Show, and you can go to my website at thesamwhitfield.com, where you can find links to the iTunes show archives to listen to previous episodes, in case you want a refresher. You can also read my daily, semi-weekly blog, I should say. I try to post daily over at thesamwhitfield.com, but because I'm a college student and whatnot, that doesn't always occur the way I want it to occur. I don't always have time to post, and I don't always have time to podcast. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. I had to take some time off from doing the radio show live, but I'm back, and it's great to be back. Also, you can chat with us at any time here in the Spreaker chat room. If you go to Spreaker.com and listen and search for the Whitfield Analysis with Sam Whitfield on the Spreaker page, you should be able to find it. And Jeff Hamill, the former producer of the Whitfield Analysis, I shouldn't say former, because technically he still is, he's just been on a hiatus. We'll have him on the show in the future to kind of explain what he's doing. He's in the chat room. He's kind of moderating the whole thing right now. But jump in, and we have a lot to talk about. And without further ado, I want to kind of explain why we're here tonight. Other than the fact that the show is back, that's great. But I have another reason for having tonight's show, and that is enough deliberation, enough putting off. I have finally decided to endorse a candidate. As some of you may know, earlier in the summer when I was doing the Whitfield Analysis podcast via my iPad, I endorsed Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin. I thought he had what I thought at the time was a pretty good campaign, and the man is definitely a strong grassroots conservative, both fiscally and socially. However, he's not too far out there on the social issues, and I really, really liked him. But he was one of the first people to drop out too, and so it figures. I learned my lesson to never endorse that early. But now that it's 2016 and the election season is actually into full swing, I've looked at all the candidates as objectively as I can. And I actually wrote... I've been kind of mulling over and debating in my head which nominee I think would be the best, because I think that they all have positives and I think that they all have negatives. even Donald Trump, who I utterly despise right now as a quote-unquote conservative, because he's not a conservative, but we'll get to that later on in the program. But for right now, I want to state that I am voting for a candidate who will usher in a new American century for the United States. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there has been much speculation online, and a couple of you guessed it right, but I have decided to officially endorse Marco Rubio for President of the United States. Now, I know that there's been a lot of slack, a lot of people have been giving him slack over the Gang of Eight border patrol thing, and the whole thing with his quote-unquote lax immigration policy. Honestly, folks, I don't think it's that lax to begin with. Even if it is, though, this is one thing that pisses me off about conservatives a lot, is some of us, and I'm not naming names, but I think Mr. Hamill will know one of these individuals who I might be referring to. Some of us in the conservative movement tend to get fixated on one specific issue, and there are certain conservatives out there who won't let one issue go. And that is the end-all, be-all for who they decide to pick for a presidential nominee. And so I really think this Gang of Eight scandal, if you want to call it a scandal, because there really was no conspiracy to cover it up, it happened, so it's not really a scandal. This Gang of... people are calling it a scandal, but let's call it the Gang of Eight incident. Is inconsequential, in my opinion, to the bigger picture. And honestly, there are a couple of... I just think it's stupid that we keep laboring on about that specific point. Now, the reason why I'm endorsing Mr. Rubio, to get into more specific areas, is as follows. I think he is probably one of the strongest people when it came to foreign policy. He understands how national security interests are shifting, and he wants to take out terrorism. There's no doubt about that. But he's not one of these crazy individuals who says that we're going to nuke the Middle East and expect the sand to turn green, or whatever Ted Cruz says. Now, I have a lot of respect for Ted Cruz in certain areas, but Marcos seems to want to actually go after terrorism cells in and of themselves. He wants to allow the authorities to be able to perform surveillance on mosques here in the United States with proper channels, which I think is fine. Let me explain that a little more. Rubio is proposing, and he said this in the debate the other night too, there are mosques which are established as religious institutions, publicly so, and most of those mosques, there's no problem with those in the country. the mosques that he is worried about, and that a lot of national security analysts are also worried about, are the ones set up by terrorism cell members as a sort of front, a business front, kind of like how the mafia did back when they were a big deal. If you ever watched The Sopranos, you know that the mafia has storefronts and restaurants, and that's how a lot of these Islamic radical terror cells are operating now. And the fact that he's come up with a plan in order to give our intelligence officials the resources they need to ethically perform surveillance and prevent terrorism attacks is just absolutely spectacular. Another area where a lot of people bring this up, and this is the primary reason why I like Marco Rubio, is his experience. Rubio is 2 years younger than Obama is. Actually, but he has spent the majority of his career in the Florida House, and he has diligently worked on legislature to help improve the well-being of Florida. And don't forget, folks, that he has also been a strong Tea Partier, conservative, or at least I guess he was back in 2010. Another thing that I really like about Rubio is his policy on education. I read an article the other day from Rubio's personal blog on Medium, and I actually want to read some of this to you. This comes from medium.com, and I will hyperlink this in the show notes. The headline is, "It's National School Choice Week. Time to push bold solutions for parents and students." Rubio writes, "Our world is changing faster than ever before, and the skills necessary to get ahead are changing with it. Now more than ever, a quality education is key to achieving the American dream. But today's American education system is failing our students. We are at great risk of allowing our society to be one where the American dream may be unachievable for too many young people. Our children could end up being the first generation in American history worse off than the generation that came before. For millions of parents and students across the country, the public education system is nothing short of a disaster. After World War II, the United States had the best education system in the world. Today, we trail most parts of Europe and Asia. We have alarmingly high dropout rates, and those students who do graduate aren't equipped with the skills they need to succeed in either post-secondary education or the workforce. They're products of an education system in which 2/3 of the kids can't read at grade level." And folks, this is not in the article, but I'm going to just put this out there. That's because of the teachers' unions and how politicized our public schools have become. They've become a tool of the staunch left, and they use our children as a bargaining chip. Not that I have children of my own yet, but from what I've observed, unions seem to be the big problem. Continuing on, our future as a nation depends on an education system that provides a path upward for those who are not born wealthy or powerful. Rubio then goes on to explain how he would fix the education system. And he says, in 2013, I introduced a new pathway to school choice nationwide through the Educational Opportunities Act. Modeled after a successful program I supported in the Florida House, this proposal offers tax credits for donations that fund scholarships to low-income students by redirecting taxpayer dollars away from the federal government and to scholarship organizations. This plan would expand school choice for those in need, give parents greater control over their children's education, and promote innovation outside the public school system. Now, I will link to this article in the show notes blog post as promised. That is just an excerpt. But the other thing that I really like about Rubio is the fact that he is an innovator. I have watched him speak, not in person, but I've heard interviews with him on radio, and I've watched numerous interviews, and even on his Medium page on medium.com, which I suggest you all check out. He actually just wrote an article about how we need innovation from entrepreneurs. We need companies like Uber and Medium and Facebook and Airbnb. We need new innovative companies to keep being created in this country. And Marco understands how Web 2.0 and how Entrepreneurship 2.0, as I'm calling it, is going to improve America. Last year, in fact, we covered this a little bit on the Whitfield analysis before we went off the air for a little while. There was this story about how the New York Taxi Medallion Union was trying to shut down Uber because they didn't like the fact that Uber, which is an innovative company, is essentially putting the government-run taxi unions out of the business of taxing, basically. I know that's kind of a mouthful, but I hope that made sense. We've seen other things, and so we need businesses that do provide an entrepreneurial spirit, because that will be what boosts America's economy. You look at companies like Apple. Apple is probably my favorite company of all time. They're constantly innovating. And yes, Jeff, I know you have an Android, so before you pipe up, yeah. Even so, though, let me include Android. The smartphone market in and of itself is an innovation. And Marco Rubio, the reason I am really supporting him as far as entrepreneurship goes, he's the only candidate I have seen that really understands how entrepreneurship works. And he's not just like, yeah, entrepreneurship. No, he's actually cited on, like I said, on his Medium page, which I believe he runs himself. And he's talked about how we need innovation from companies like Uber and others. So as far as entrepreneurship, he's the number one guy. Now, going back to the immigration thing, like I said, that is his one blemish as on his record. But as I said, folks, we are in an election cycle. Where the issue of immigration and really any single topic is not enough to disqualify one single candidate. You cannot say that Rubio is a poor choice for a nominee just because of his Gang of Eight debacle. And by the way, in the last Republican debate, I couldn't find audio of this, but in the last Republican debate, he admitted that that was a mistake. That he made errors there, and that he's learned from it. He was a new politician. He was learning to play the game in politics, and like it or not, folks, politics is a game. It is. And Rubio understands how to play the game. He understands how to play well with others. In fact, just before I came on air, well, not just, but while I was doing show prep and getting everything ready, I was talking with my grandfather, and he said that he likes the fact that Rubio is willing to reach across the aisle to communicate with the other side when bipartisan positions are needed. Unlike Ted Cruz, who, as a person I like, but as a candidate, he seems a little bit too much of a lone, he seems to have the lone gunslinger about him, and that's great for that's great for television and media, but as far as candidates go, the independents and the moderate Republicans, and yes, I know Tea Partiers hate that term, but moderate Republicans do exist, and they do still make up part of the voting bloc. They do not like Ted Cruz because they think that he, again, relies too much on his own self-aggrandizement. And they just think he's some of the moderates I've talked to, some of the moderate Republicans in my family, they think Cruz is a little too arrogant. I happen to think, personally, that Cruz, to me, I don't think he's an arrogant person, but I think because he gives off that kind of air, it's going to sink him as a candidate. Now, finally, there is the issue of Rubio, and is he or is he not a true conservative? And for this, I would like to bring up a clip from Rush Limbaugh, who I think articulated it so well the other day on his radio show. I couldn't have done any better. So, without further ado, here's Rush Limbaugh talking about Marco Rubio. Is he still a conservative or not? Let's listen in.
Now, I have to say one more time. I do not like, and I've got a Reuters story. Do I find it? Yes. Marco Rubio emerges as champion of battered Republican establishment. Another Reuters story, headline, Republican Cruz calls Iowa win a victory for conservative grassroots. I do not like speaking for myself, I don't like this idea that Marco Rubio is all of a sudden being labeled as an establishment candidate. I know that Rubio's got the baggage of that Gang of Eight bill. And I know that in many people's minds, he's got the baggage of wanting to grant the current number of illegal citizenship. I understand that. But I'm here to... Marco Rubio is no moderate Republican centrist. I'm not... I mean, I can sit here like anybody else could and try to make explanations for you for why he did the Gang of Eight. I'm not even going to try to put words into his mouth. I don't want to be seen as making excuses. I'm just telling you, I don't see Marco Rubio as anything other than a legitimate, full-throated conservative. Nobody's pure, and nobody is ever free of making mistakes.
Sorry about that dead air there for a second, folks. But, I just had to find the next audio clip I want to play. Zach in the chat room. Zach, it is good to have you back in the chat room, my friend. Welcome to Zach and Jeff once again. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, quick announcement. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., 5:15 p.m. actually, I will be having Mr. Michael Hausum of House Rules Radio on the program tomorrow to discuss pretty much a lot of stuff. Everything from his new radio show to what he thinks of my endorsement, and I kind of want to get a feeling of what he thinks of the election. He and I actually text back and forth. I somewhat know what he thinks, but my audience likes him, and I know that they want to know what he thinks of this. Okay. Moving on to Donald Trump, and now that I think about it, folks, we only have like 16 minutes left, so I think I'm going to need to actually do a part 2, because the plan I'm on right now, Spreaker, I did have to pay for an upgrade. I'm on the $30 a year plan, with Spreaker. It allows me to go up to 45 minutes, but I have a feeling I'm going to need more time for this. So, regarding Marco Rubio and all of that, I've done that. Now I want to move on to an issue that has really been nagging at my craw. This issue has been a thorn in my side for the last few weeks. And this is the ignorance and really just the pure assholishness of the majority of, not all, but the majority of Donald Trump's supporters. Now, I will be the first to admit, because if you go back and listen to the Whitfield analysis podcast that I did record over the summer, and some of the blog posts that I wrote on Sam Whitfield, on thesamwhitfield.com and elsewhere, when Trump first joined in, I have to admit, I was a big fan of the fact that Trump was shaking things up. Trump totally decimated political correctness, and he still is decimating political correctness, and on that front, I really admire Donald Trump on that, because he is stirring things up, and he's basically taken political correctness and wrung its neck. And it's kind of hilarious, because the far left media doesn't really know what to do with Trump because they've thrown everything at him, including the kitchen sink, and yet he's just still there, and they don't really know what to do with him. So as far as being a thorn in the left's side, I think that Donald Trump is a genius in that sense. And I like him strictly for the fact that he is just totally annoying the crap out of the far left. However, Trump, I don't know where to start with this. My whole issue with Trump started back in August during that first debate with Fox News when he attacked Megyn Kelly. Yes, I am one of those Megyn Kelly supporters. Damn it. And in this case, I'm proud of it, too. Let me be the first to say, I wrote this in my column. I remember I went on Michael Housem's old show that he used to do with, I think it was the Right Mike's radio show, where I went on. But early in the summer, I was on Housem's old radio show, speaking of Michael Housem, and I said, I don't understand why people are getting pissed off at Megyn Kelly. Because that question that she asked Trump about the way he treats women and the whole thing with the Miss America pageant, folks, that's a question that he would have gotten from CNN or MSNBC or ABC or any one of the other networks. He would have gotten that question regardless because of who he is. And they would have asked it, with venom and with malice in their voices. I honestly think Megyn Kelly asked that question in the most objective, neutral, and accommodating tone that she could have possibly done. And people are saying, well, nobody asked Rand Paul, or nobody asked Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz that same question. Why did they ask the Donald? Because that's an issue related to Trump specifically. I'm sorry, but Donald Trump just, in regards to that question that Kelly asked him about the way he treats women, that was a Donald-centric, issue. And I guess it still kind of is. By the same token, no one was complaining when Megyn Kelly went after Marco Rubio the other night for, flip-flopping on the Gang of Eight. And he handled it a lot more gracefully than Trump did. If I were Donald Trump, I would have taken that opportunity to, really answer that question in a calm. I mean, Trump basically said that, the issue isn't really important, which is true. And I would have added something along the lines of, this is show business, that's show business and has nothing to do with politics. I think Megyn Kelly was honestly giving him a free, kind of like a get out of jail free card. He should have been able to, I think he should have been able to answer that question with a calm, collected manner. Obviously, I know the calm, collected manner and, Donald Trump. I realize those two things don't really mix. But if he were smart, he would have answered that in a charismatic way. like I said, I think Megyn Kelly was trying to throw him a bone, and Trump just didn't take it. Okay, Zach in the chat room brings up a good point, though. Megyn Kelly ruined Scott Walker by asking him an accusatory abortion question, and then never getting back to him for 45 minutes. Yeah, I understand that point, Zach, but again, would MSNBC or CNN or anyone else, would they have acted any differently? That's what I'm saying. I understand why people are upset with Megyn Kelly, but what I don't understand is, in terms of that, but what I don't understand is why there's so much malice towards her, I guess, is my overall point. Now, it's not just the way that Megyn Kelly was treated by Trump that really made me start to turn against him. The fact that he has really that he's flip-flopped on so many issues. He was for gun control before he was against gun control. He was for abortion before he was anti-abortion. And by the way, that's not Trump being pro-life. That's Donald Trump capitulating to whichever group he thinks will be able to serve him the best. Yeah, I honestly, in regards to Trump, and I apologize if you hear clicking, ladies and gentlemen, because right now I am loading an audio clip, if you can hear that. Trump is all about Trump, and there's just no other way around that. Now, the other day, Ben Shapiro, on his new podcast over at DailyWire.com, really broke down the Trump campaign and explained why Trump is not a conservative. Now, this clip is about 2 minutes and 42 seconds long. I'm not going to have a lot of time to break this down in the remaining 6 minutes, but I'm going to try to set up a good segue for us to go on to part number 2, which I have a feeling we're going to need to do a lot of that in the future. So here is Ben Shapiro on Donald Trump and how Trump is not a true conservative. Cut number 1, go.
There are reasons to back Trump, but don't pretend he's anything else than a con man. You can say we need a con man. That's okay. But the man's a con man. He's Professor Harold Hill in Iowa trying to sell tubas. Okay, here's how much so. So yesterday, he goes to First Christian Church in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Well, first, before we get to that, last week at his rally that he held at the same time as the debate, at the very end, he turns to his daughter Ivanka. He says, "Ivanka over here, Ivanka. She's pregnant, and I want her to come back here and give birth in Iowa. In fact, I wish you would give birth right now. I'd win Iowa." If you vote for him because of this stuff, what? Just what? Okay, so anyway, he was at First Christian Church in Council Bluffs, Iowa, yesterday. That's a Sunday, and Donald Trump, as we know, is a very religious man. And so Donald Trump goes to church, and they're passing around the communion plates. Okay, I'm a Jew. I figure that if there's a plate with little wafers on it, it's a communion plate, right? Am I right here? Okay, it's a communion plate. Trump sees the communion plate, and it's made of silver, right? Like a lot of communion plates are. and passing around this communion plate, he proceeds to reach into his wallet, pull out money, and put it on the communion plate. Seriously, he did this. He said, "I thought it was for offering." Well, it's possible that Trump doesn't actually know that much about communion, because here's what he told CNN a few months ago about communion. Quote, "When I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness, and I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed. I think in terms of, let's go on, let's make it right. When I drink my little wine and have my little cracker?" Okay, everybody in this room, except for me, does this, right? Okay, have you ever described it as drink my little wine, have my little... It sounds like a Frank Sinatra song. Drink my little wine, have my little cracker. Like, what? And yet people are buying into this. And people are buying into the idea that he's anti-establishment. The guy who just came out for national health care yesterday, but said he's not for it because he's against Obamacare, but he's for national health care. And then proceeded to drop all of this language about Christianity and call Ted Cruz a liar, all of this. He says he's going to stand up against the establishment. Okay, yesterday, Bob Dole was on the radio. You know it, I know it, the American people know it, Bob Dole. Bob Dole was on the radio. And honest to God, it's just, I mean, the positive news is he's still alive. I'm glad. But Bob Dole is on the radio, and Bob Dole decides that he is going to, Bob Dole decides he's basically going to endorse Donald Trump. Here's...
Oh God, folks, I just remembered we only have like 2 minutes left in this segment, if you want to call it a segment, and I just realized that in my show notes, I have us going to break, and then, which basically means I'm starting a new episode, if for those of you listening on the podcast. We're starting a new episode, and then I'm coming back and I'm playing a clip from freaking Bob Dole. And for those of you who are millennials who don't know, Bob Dole is like 200 and like he's like 200 years old, or at least his voice boxes or something. Good God. Oh, someone wants to call me on my private line, and that is not going to happen right now. So, without further ado, I am going to take a quick timeout, upload the next round of audio to play, and then we will be right back after this brief intermission.